Welcome into the Buckeye Blitz. I'm Tito, Jeff Thitoff. I'm on the X at It Happens, or Twitter, if you want to call it that. Make sure this is, by the way, Fantasy Sports powered by DSP Media. We've got a great free app for Apple and Android users. Go check it out, download it. We have round-the-clock programming, all kinds of new shows we're constantly adding, opening a new studio in Tampa. So many things going on in the world of DSP Media and FanStream Sports. The Big Ten, we'll talk about their games now this week. I want to make sure you get the schedule out of the way. There's no Friday night games this week, but we do have on the Saturday slate, Minnesota's at number 24, Illinois. That's a noon kick in that game, noon Eastern time. Northwestern's at Purdue, also at noon. There's several 3:30 games. Number 1 Oregon's at Michigan. Number 13 Indiana's at Michigan State. And UCLA is at Nebraska. Nebraska's had obviously the brutal loss to Indiana and then a much better game against Ohio State last week, which we'll talk about next. Wisconsin's at Iowa at 7:30 p.m. and USC at Washington also at 7:30 p.m. So Ohio State's trying to put that Nebraska game in their rearview mirror. Ohio State just had a terrible game on the offensive line, and it only got worse with news about injuries. We'll talk about that momentarily. But Ohio State finished with 31 carries for 64 yards. Quinshon Judkins led the way, averaging 2.9 yards per carry. He had 10 carries for 29 yards. Travion Henderson was 10 for 25. Will Howard was 8 for 14. And so just a really bad day running the ball. Passing the ball, Will Howard was actually decent. He was 13 out of 16 for 221 yards, the 3 touchdowns, and the 1 interception. But now we got to start talking about where we're at injury-wise. This is a big game for Ohio State, obviously 6-1, ranked 4th in the country, traveling to Penn State, who is 7-0, and a chance for a signature win. Ohio State, honestly, it's probably an elimination game. If they lose this game, I think they're going to have a really hard time making the playoff. And so they need to keep piling up these wins, and getting a win here on the road would get a lot of the pressure off of Ryan Day and this team. And I'll say this first. There's a lot of pressure that comes from the fans and the media about how Ryan Day is not the right guy for the job and they need to make a change. Look, I'm not buying into any of that. There's a lot of season left to be played here. Ryan Day's had a lot of success here. I know what's happened the last few years against Michigan. We also know a couple of those years there were extenuating circumstances where Michigan had some intel they weren't supposed to. They acquired some intel in a way that was very unsportsmanlike and against the rules. So I'm not putting that against him. The Missouri game last year, that was a bad game, but Ohio State came in there with, they had a new quarterback in there playing with Kyle McCord leaving. And so although Devin Brown's not necessarily new, he gets there early. Then you have the Lincoln Keenholz in there. That was an ugly, ugly game, no doubt about it. But for the most part, Ryan Day's been a damn good coach. He's been the right kind of head coach for Ohio State. He truly believes in his players. I believe that wholeheartedly, that he believes in his players. I think he is a pretty good mix of what a head coach should look like today. He's taken over the CEO role. College football's changed so much that I'm not on this fire Ryan bandwagon, Ryan Day bandwagon that a lot of people are on. There's a lot of season left. And all these people that are calling for his head right now, what if Ryan Day wins out? What if he wins out, wins the Big Ten, makes the national championship, then who knows what happens there. But I'm saying if he goes that far, you're still going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, they got to get rid of him. And, if you win the Big Ten this year, one loss go into that. And I think it's premature to start saying this stuff. You've got to fire Ryan Day. They've got one loss this year. It's on the road by 1 point to the number 1 team in the country in a game where Ohio State got jobbed at the end. There's no doubt about that. Now, it was a great, shouldn't say great move. It was a successful move by Lanning and Oregon, what they did with the 12th man on the field. And obviously it was so shady that the NCAA changed the rule immediately after this. So the game is that now you can't do what Oregon did in college football. That's how unsavory the way winning that game was for Oregon. So anyway, we'll move on past that, move past Nebraska. Ohio State, they last week, the defense played much better. I'd like the defensive line, how much pressure they were able to put on Dylan Raiola in Nebraska. They had a bend, not break kind of mentality for most of that game. Nebraska scored 17 points. Yes, that's more than I thought they would score, but I was happy with the way the defense played. They came up with stops at the end. The interception at the end, that they needed. They were missing Lathan Ransom, that's for sure. Lathan Ransom is a key part of this defense. He was out with a foot injury. Looks like he's going to play this week. Ryan Day said he's practiced in full, and This is what he said. He had a great day of practice, full day of practice. He's ready to go. He is going to play. So that's big for the defense. The defense needs more dogs like Latham Ransom out there. And they need to be tougher on the defensive line. Successful? Yes, this past weekend. They did put pressure on Nebraska and Dylan Raiola, but they've got to be even better this week against Penn State. We're not sure the starting quarterback's going to be Penn State. It'll be a tough environment. Penn State's defense, they run a lot with the new OC in there. They're running a lot of different, they're shifting a lot of motion, a lot of play call changes at the line of scrimmage. They're doing a lot of things trying to confuse opposing defenses. The good news for that, and I talked to DeVere Posey about this tonight, the former Ohio State great receiver, but he was saying that the fact that it's a road game for Ohio State, it should be easier for them to communicate because there's a lot of communication has to go on with the defense when there's all these different shifts going on with the offense. But he said because the crowd will be quieter when Penn State has the ball. It's absolutely true. They usually louder on defense than they would on offense. The Penn State crowd should be quieter. So that should help Ohio State. A veteran defense that can communicate well and getting Latham Ransom back all sets up very nicely for Ohio State. So I'm not as concerned about the defense in this one. The offensive line, that's another story. You had the injury to Josh Simmons, season-ending injury, and they put Zen Michalski in there, and he struggled against Nebraska. Quite frankly, I thought he struggled against Nebraska. He had a couple of decent runs his way, but for the most part, though, I think he struggled. And Ryan Day said he does not believe Michalski's going to be playing in this game. So he's not sure how they're going to switch things around offensively on the offensive line there, but it's a thing where Ohio State, they've got to find a way, and a lot of this goes on to Josh Fry, the offensive line coach. They've got to find the right combination. Whether you're moving Jackson around, they've got to find ways to get the right group of guys. Like there's a combination in there, I think, that will be successful, that can be successful. They have to find out if it's Hinsman, who hasn't played at all, really. They're not much at all. But if it's Carson Hinsman, they've got to find a way. There's a way that, like the Rubik's Cube type thing, there's a way to solve this puzzle with the offensive line. They've got to figure out what that is because they cannot run the ball 31 times for 64 yards in any more games and expect to win. What I hope is, one, that Will Howard have time to take more shots downfield. You got to get the ball into the playmakers' hands of Buka and Smith. You got to get the ball out there to those guys, and you've got to have time to do that. Also, I'm hoping we will see more quarterback designed runs. Look, Will Howard's like 6'5", 240 pounds, 235 maybe. But I don't know why they're not using him more on designed runs for this Ohio State offense. It seems like there should be a lot of chance with the quarterback draws and things like that. On the RPO type thing, it'll be an option type thing where he can keep it. He can get positive yards. There's no reason you can't have a 6'5", 235-pound quarterback who should be able to get better than the 2.0 yards, 2.03 yards per carry whatever they got last week against Nebraska. That's inexcusable, and that's going to be a key in this game. If Ohio State's offensive line does not play better than it did against Nebraska, it's going to be a long day. Penn State's got a solid offensive line. I think you can run on them. It's just that if Ohio State can pass protect enough for Will Howard to make some plays downfield and got to get the ball in the hands of Jeremiah Smith. I mean, Carnell Tate had a good game too, 4 catches, 102 yards. That was good to see. But Ohio State needs to get overall better offensive line play, give Will Howard a chance, give the running backs a chance. Because this week right now in Happy Valley, it's an elimination game for Ohio State. I'm glad it's a noon kick. I'm glad it's not the whiteout game. But Ohio State, for the most part, has owned Penn State in recent memory. If you look at the scores in the last 10 years, last times they played, I should say, Ohio State's pretty much dominated for the most part. They're not going to dominate Saturday. It'll be a close game. But I think Ohio State, if they get better offensive line play and keep pressuring the quarterback and getting Latham Ransom back, I think this Ohio State team can put up a double-digit win over Penn State on Saturday, and then hopefully continue to win on. They still have a tough game against Indiana, who could very well be undefeated still when they play Ohio State the week before Michigan, and see what happens on that one. So first college football rankings come out on Tuesday, November 5th. We'll see where Ohio State lays in that one. A lot is going to depend on what happens here on Saturday against Penn State. All right, that's it for the Blitz. Thanks so much for tuning in. Follow me on the Twitter, on the X, on Twitter, @ThatHappens. This is DSP Media, powering FanStream Sports. Download the app. It's free for Apple and Android users. Check out all of our programming. Thanks so much. We'll talk again after the Penn State game.